Hey, what's happening, Miles? How are you, buddy?
Doing awesome. How's the airport?
Oh man, I'm in Austin, Texas. It's a great airport. I have not been in this airport before, so I know we got all the microphones going above me. But listen, it is another increasing influence, and as you can see, I have on the screen, hard work pays off. I mean, how fun is this to talk about? And I'm not going to tell everybody what it is yet. I am streaming from my mobile phone, so it is what it is while we're out here. But all right, everybody, and Jennifer is going to be joining us in just a second as well. But which is Thursday on Increasing Influence with Dave Cooper and Miles Biggs Ideas. And Miles Biggs Idea has a lot of news today, which is super cool. So if you're just joining us, please hit that like and share button right now. And make sure you follow us on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. And if you're not subscribed, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. All right, Miles, let's see if Jennifer's there and ready to come in. Oh, I see a big smile. Let me add Jennifer to the stream here. What's happening, Jennifer?
Hey, Jen.
Hi, everybody.
Yeah, so Jennifer's joining us because I will be heading to my gate soon, Miles, because I have been on a week-long journey here in Austin, and it doesn't end here. I got to drive all the way to Harrisburg once I land for another modular home builder event tomorrow.
Yeah. Talk about how our work pays off. Air miles pay off, right?
Air miles. Well, let's see, right? Air miles and hotel rooms for the family, right? When we travel somewhere. Yeah, for sure. What do you got going on, Jennifer? Haven't seen you in a week.
I know, right? It's like we're getting to catch up now as well.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So listen, Miles, I've been having a lot of fun traveling, but why don't you walk us through kind of what happened to you this morning? You kind of woke up and somebody sent you a message, and what was that message?
Yeah, so one thing I have on myself is a Google alert. Something I recommend everyone to have. If you don't know how to do that, you can go to google.com/alerts, and then you can be notified of anytime your name's in the news or your company. And I just have a Google alert just to track stuff because you never know what's going to pop up. And woke up this morning, was checking my email and had a Google alert. And so I was checking out what it was for, and it's for my name and the podcast I have, Relish the Journey. And I click on it and saw this article in the New York Weekly that was ranking the top 15 podcasts of 2020. And mine made the list, which was really exciting. And not only did it make the list of the top 15, but I cracked the top 5. And Relish the Journey was listed as number 5 on this list.
Dude, that is so cool.
Yeah, thank you.
That is so cool. Yeah, man.
Yeah,
virtual high fives for sure.
Yeah.
Listen, so I mean that's what it all comes down to, right? It's the the hard work pays off. And I put the link in the ticker, and I think it's so fabulous, Miles, to watch you kind of grow with everything, because you're putting in so much work. You have your TED Talk coming up next week as well, right?
Next Saturday. Yeah, next Saturday. Yeah.
And you got your book coming out. I mean, so you're actually putting it out there. You're taking the time. You're getting it all done. And time management's a big part of everything that we do, And there's no excuses. You can get it done.
For sure. Yeah. And look at you. You're in an airport, right? A perfect example of that, right? Most people would make an excuse that they can't do it because they're sitting at their gate, but you're still going live. So I
am going live.
You make time for what's important.
It is, and I made the commitment to go live 6 days a week, and I don't believe we missed any as of yet, and I hope we don't. But I am going to check out here because I got to go catch my flight. But Jennifer is going to carry this on through, and I think it'll be good to really talk about all the things that you've been doing, Miles. And Jennifer, you can even elaborate on all the things we're doing out here and where we're heading next.
Yeah, for sure.
Like Colton might join in too. He's popping in the corner.
We might have a fourth guest.
Yeah, let's do it.
Love it. All right, guys. I'm gonna watch you as long as I can. Have fun, and we'll see you. And I guess I'll be in Pennsylvania tomorrow. So tune in from Pennsylvania tomorrow.
All right, safe travels.
All right, we'll see y'all.
All right.
See you, Dave.
Well, there you have it.
There you go. Now we can make fun of him, right? He's not here.
That's never hard to do, Miles. Well, congratulations again. I mean, talk about waking up and how did you start your day? I mean, first of all, you were on your own live feed this morning, right?
Yeah, so I got the news and, just sort of processed it. And, I'm a content guy now. So I'm like, this is perfect content. I'm just going to, instead of recording something and doing it later, I'll just throw up the live feed and just sort of react and share it and, just put it out there. And so I texted my wife first. She'd already left for work. So I made sure she found out before a live feed on social media. And then, just went up and said, hey, this happened, and just broke it down. And it's really exciting for me just even to be included in that list, to be in the top 5. And I'll put a link after we're done talking to it. But I mean, it was really cool. Freaking Joe Rogan is number 3 on this list. And somehow yours truly is number 5, which is awesome. But it was cool for me. And I said in my live feed this morning that, so many people told me not to do it. And I'm sure you and Dave have run into this. Whenever you do something that other people haven't done or that they aren't comfortable with, I feel like their first reaction is to downplay it and try to convince you to also not do it because they tried it and it didn't work, or they've always wanted to, but then haven't done it. Right. And so they want you to, be with them and not doing your own thing. And so it's fun for me because I just thought of all these people that told me I was crazy, told me it would never work. And what am I doing? Why am I wasting my time on all of this? And now I could say, well, here you go. Right. And it's just one article. It's not like I'm making millions of dollars or really any dollars directly off the show, but it is just, it's nice to be recognized and for other people to think it's cool. And it's just, to me, a sign that I'm doing something good. I'm on the right track. And like Dave mentioned, it's just the start of many things for me. I've got the TED Talk next week, a book coming out shortly thereafter. And I just hope to have one thing snowball into the other and build some good momentum.
So before we talk about that, the TED Talk and everything else, just based on what you just said, there's 3 things that I'd love to go back to and explore. The first thing is the words that you chose when you said, this just happened to me. Number 1, it didn't just happen.
Sure, yeah.
And number 2, all of the naysayers, the people who said, don't waste your time. It's not worth it. Don't do it. And what drove them to say those things. And then the third thing is, this is all part of building character and social proof and how you leverage that when you're thinking about your next goal. So there's definitely a couple of different points that you just made and would love to explore that more with you.
Yeah. So the first one, it's totally a turn of phrase, right? It happened because of me, right? I guess give you the correct words to use. And, it's been about 3 years now, just putting my head down and going after it. I think episode number 175, I think it is, went live today of Relish the Journey.
Wow. So
my overnight success, right? Took 175 episodes in almost 3 years to make happen. So yeah, it's just one of those things where I didn't do it. I've never done it to make money or for the article, or I've just done it because it's fun. And I think that's a big thing I encourage people to. When people ask me why or how to get started, you have to pick something you enjoy doing. Otherwise, you're not going to continue to show up for 170 plus episodes to get to the point where other people also think it's cool, not just you thinking it's cool.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, you like the Beatles, you became an overnight success after 10,000 hours of performing.
Right.
And
then it's like, it just doesn't even feel like it's a success, right? It's like, I'm just still so in the heat of it and thinking about what's the next thing that I'm trying to actually kind of, pun intended, relish this part of the journey and that I got it. But it's cool. It's a good positive thing to have happen because it's easy to get caught up in the get it done mode, producing it, putting it out and on to the next thing and not stopping to, smell the roses, as they say.
Right. So when you think about the people who told you not to do it, and when you yourself are sitting here encouraging others to do it, why, weren't there people cheering you on? Why were they saying don't do it?
I think so many people, and I don't know for sure, right? Because I haven't asked them. At some point, I think I will circle back to some of the people that are friends and family that said that and just have a real frank conversation about it and find out.
Right.
But I think for most people, they're concerned. Like they will say they have your well-being in mind and they don't want you to damage your household, your family, your reputation, and do something crazy like quit your job that's paying the bills to say you're going to go be an artist, right? But that whole tendency to try to have people be reasonable never gets you where you want to go. Like, you have to be unreasonable to make cool things and great things happen.
Right.
That's how you stand out from the pack. Everybody else is reasonable, and you've got to be separate and be a little bit unreasonable to keep pushing forward. So I think it's a mix of that, like concern for your well-being, but then also a lot of people just, if they can't have it, they don't want you to have it, right? It's like, you think about a kid, you take his toy and he starts crying, and now he doesn't want anybody to play with his toy. It's that follows us into adulthood, I think. So, they want you to be at their level instead of reaching a level they're not able to reach. And it doesn't have to be that way. One thing I've realized, and that's why I've even had some people say, why are you encouraging people to do what you're doing? Isn't that going to be competition? And it's like, I guess if you look at it that way, but that's taking a closed off approach to it, that there's only so much to have and there's scarcity, when this is the internet we're talking about, and people, and there's like billions of us on the planet and billions of stories. Other people can tell people's stories, and there's plenty of room for everybody to play nice in the sandbox, right? So I try to focus on that abundance mindset versus the scarcity mindset, and encourage people, cheer them on versus trying to hold them back. And I think if more people do that, more people would be doing what we're doing right now, right? And entering the content creation side, not just the content consumption side.
Right. Absolutely. And I mean, even with that, competition is good for everybody. It helps you be better. It helps you want more. It helps you learn from not only your mistakes, but also the mistakes of others. So I think, we've had a couple of athletes on this show, and when you talk about the athlete mindset, when you race against people who are slower than you, you just kind of sit back on your heels a little bit. But when you're in this with others who are at your level or better, that's inspiring.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes you want to be better. And because I think that's a great point. It takes me back to what I said about it doesn't feel like a success, because it's like, there's still people out there running faster than me, right? To use your analogy. And then I still feel like I'm trying to catch. And so I'm more focused on that than, people that might be quote unquote slower or just getting started. But that's true. That competition makes you want to keep going and get better and run faster, whatever analogy you want to use.
Yeah, definitely. So then, taking it one step further, what advice would you give to others other than work hard, keep at it? Are there any secrets to the success?
Oh man. Yeah. It's like everybody, I know I searched for this like silver bullet too, right? Like, what's the one thing I can do? And there isn't one thing. So much of it is like, all these fad diets. If you want to lose weight, you need to watch your calories, burn more calories than you intake, right? And you lose weight. Right. If you want to be successful in content creation or personal branding, you need to show up over and over again and put the work in. There's no shortcut. But I would say the advice or the tip or what I found that works is you can't fall in love with your own stuff, right? You've got to be willing to iterate and change and adapt and pivot until you find the right mix of things. So if I was still marketing the podcast, recording the podcast today the way I was on episode 5, I don't think I'd be mentioned in this article, right? When I listen back to old episodes, I cringe. My interviewing style was very rigid. It was like, okay, question 1, now question 2 versus a free-flowing conversation. And even like what I did for cover artwork, it was a mess, but I was learning. And so I think that's the big thing too, is you can't get so married to your own idea that you're not willing to change your idea. You don't have to give up on your idea, but you can change the way you execute it until you find the mix of content, the mix of promotion, your style, whatever that mix is that works. You just have to keep showing up and trying until you finally find the right combination.
Yeah. And even it's funny, lately, again, sticking to the whole athlete analogies right now, I've been talking to a couple of people in the space, and what they say about athletes is you can't just practice one sport. You have to do that, cross training, if you will. And, for you, that is what you're doing. You have your day job. Yep. You have your podcast. You're about to do a TED Talk. You have a book coming out. So that's, your social cross training, if you will, that, one kind of feeds into the other.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's whenever you master or feel like you master one, you pick up another one to challenge yourself. It's like I'm to the point now where you could say, Miles, you're interviewing this person for a podcast and that's all you tell me. And I could start it up and have an hour podcast and be totally fine. I don't need any backstory. Like I'll just lead the interview. Like I've gotten to the point where I'm good at that. And now doing video is a whole nother ball game because people can see me and I can't be just like laying on my back talking to somebody, right? You've got that whole different element, which is cool and helps improve every other style of interviewing. And then, yeah, giving a scripted speech for something like a TED Talk is different. Writing it down for a book and what that looks like is different. And I agree. I never thought of it like cross-training before, but I think it's a good example. It's working out different muscles and it makes you, more well-rounded and just stronger altogether.
So exactly. And so now what, you've won this award, you've been recognized and, it's great. You shared it with your wife, but now how do you take this and use it, to further promote the podcast and the other things you're doing? Like how can you give us, maybe the 3 things that you're thinking about of how you could leverage this?
Yeah. So it's interesting for me personally. And I think for a lot of people, it feels weird even to do this where I got on with Dave and I didn't know we were going to make the whole episode today about this news that I had, right? It was my plan when I shared with him the good news to get a whole interview feature, which I'm thankful for. And I appreciate you and him for sort of shining the spotlight on me here. But it can feel weird to toot your own horn, right? But that's what you have to do to get the best leverage out of something like this article that I have now. So when you see people's websites where it's as featured on and there's a logo there, right? So now I need to look at my websites and add something like this in, add it to my LinkedIn profile. I can add it to my resume. I can add it to the bio on my book, right? Where it's like a little bit about the author. I can say that, he's the host of Relish the Journey, a top 15 podcast, according to the New York Weekly, right? And it just becomes like a bit of a calling card where you can append it to everything that I'm doing and just use it to make people say, oh, okay, it's not just one of the 800 million people that have a podcast, right? It's a little differentiator, another feather in the hat to go out and to do it again, really, because that's going to be the thing is you can get it once, awesome, but can you show up and have what's the next version or make the list 2 years in a row or now get into a bigger stage and, hey, it'd be great if people started paying me for this, right? And you can use that to separate it, right? And so what I'm going to do, you said 3 things. I'll end up updating social media profiles to include this as an authority point, updating websites. I'm actually in the middle of consolidating websites. So when I release my new sort of brand and website, it'll be forefront there. And then update it to the book because who's this guy writing a book, right? But now I can say it's based on a TED Talk. And then I'm also the person that's been recognized for this podcast. So now if you have to choose between me and some other guy you've never heard of, who are you going to spend $20 with on a book, right? The odds are better in my favor now.
Right. Yeah. So we have, who chiming in here and making a comment, and why not toot your own horn? This is not a time for being modest.
I know I don't talk a lot about myself for a guy that's talks a lot. I'm always interviewing other people, right? So it's, I've always thought that it's better when other people say it for you than when you say it about yourself. There's that line of confidence and arrogance, right? But yeah, I did it. Here I am talking about it. It's something cool. It's something I'm proud of.
Yeah.
And it's exciting. It's awesome.
Well, this is where also having colleagues in the space, people that you've encouraged to enter the space, can actually work to your advantage, because if you're kind to them on the way up, and if you're kind, to the people above you on your way up, they'll want to celebrate your success with you.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And it's actually happening on Facebook right now. So that live stream I had this morning, I said in that live stream that, I appreciate it, but it's really because of everybody that's involved, and thank people, everyone that's been a guest on the podcast, right? That's what makes the podcast. People don't just show up to hear me.
Right.
There's all these people that have shared their stories and have been very vulnerable on the podcast. And that's what makes the podcast what it is. Not me, it's them. And they're all sharing it on Facebook right now. And it's just getting hundreds and hundreds of views. And so, yeah, to your point, it helps.
Yeah, which is so cool because, what ends up happening is networks start coming together, personal networks start coming together. And here we have John Jaworski tuning in today saying, wow, congratulations. And that's really cool,
Thanks, Sean.
that people are coming together and learning about this and really cheering you on that may not have otherwise.
Right. Yeah, I keep saying this to anybody I've talked to about today, because then the other thing that's happening is everybody's texting me, and I've had a couple of phone calls and they've seen it online. But the only thing, quote unquote, special about me and Relish the Journey is that I just decided to start and do it. And I know so many people that will say, well, I have this idea and I thought about this, but they haven't done it. And so I just tell everyone all the time, well, just do it. Just start. Sure. Yeah, it's probably will suck. Your first episode, it's going to suck. Get over it. Right.
Yeah. Well, the old saying in business, right? How do I succeed in business?
What's that?
Rule number 1 to succeed in business, get in business.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You can't be afraid. And it feels weird. You got to put yourself out there. Yes, I'm Mr. Modest according to Dave, but to me, the podcast isn't me putting myself out there. It's me shining light on other people and helping them share their stories. But yeah, you have to start. So that's and anybody that's watching this, what I hope people get from this isn't, wow, this guy's talking about himself. It's, wow, if he can do it, I can do it. And whatever that version of this is for you, I hope this is just encouragement that, yeah, it's possible. It'll take some time. It'll take some work. It'll take early mornings and late nights. But as the banner says, hard work will pay off. Yeah. As long as you keep working.
Yeah. Yeah. And don't give up. You'll hit a bump in the road here and there, but you definitely can't give up. So now what? Now we're making the most of it. Now, we've told everybody, you've updated your LinkedIn profile, you added this to the website. If you're, hopefully you're putting it on the intro of your podcast and the outro of the podcast. Now what? How do you take this to the next level now that you've had 5 minutes to digest it?
Yeah, right. So if I'm going to take more time to digest it, because it's funny, I started the podcast and named it Relish the Journey to remind myself personally to relish the journey, because I'm guilty of jumping to the next thing and the next thing and not fully appreciating things while they're happening.
Right.
So I'm going to let this simmer for a little bit, especially because I really still have to focus on the TED Talk next week and I can't mess that up. So, come November, right? This works very well for my ultimate plan, like my 1-2 year plan with what I've been doing with my content. Is it's been a bunch of these experiments. I've had Relish the Journey. I had the light bulb moments, those videos I was doing. I've been doing live streams here with Dave. I'm doing Monday Morning with Miles, which is a live stream I'm doing myself, all to kind of figure it out, try, mess up, fail, figure it out again, right? But so now the idea I'm talking about in the TED Talk is basically all that. It's called Unseen Work, is the name of the TED Talk, is the name of the book. And it's all about what nobody sees leading up to something like this article is a good example. People will read this article and find the podcast and say,
oh gosh.
Hey, Jen. Okay, we can look at you. That's fine.
So unseen work, how appropriate of a title.
Right. So that, like, you see the article, you see us here on the live stream, and you see Dave. So Dave's a lot like good at letting you behind the scenes. You see him in the polished live streams, but now you see him in the airport. You have that peek behind the scenes. So it's all about, for everything you see somebody accomplishing, there's so much more you don't see. And it's what you do while you're not seen that determines whether or not you become seen and how people see you. So without spoiling my full TED Talk, that's a little tidbit there. But the idea then is, if you find the TED Talk online, I wrote a book that really fleshes out the topic. So find me on the TED Talk, you'd like it, you want more? Well, hey, buy the book. And right now I'm beta testing a mastermind product where it's an 8-week coaching program with a group of people on Zoom that I'm running right now, where I just did week 6 last night. And so that brings the book to life. So now the cycle continues. See the TED Talk, like it, buy the book, like it, want to bring the book to life. You can sign up for the coaching program. And then I'm going to take my live streaming skills I've been honing and start interviewing people about their unseen work. So I can just push the idea, link to the book to buy, fill the funnel for the coaching program. And it'll just be this whole cycle of that brand of unseen work that has taken me years of all honing my interview skills and networking, right, to make all that happen. That's what I'm going to do next, is sort of level up on everything I've learned through Relish the Journey. I'll still do Relish the Journey, but most of my time will be spent building this ecosystem around the idea of unseen work.
Yeah, and it's funny, we don't really talk about, construction on this show. You know, Increasing Influence is really about personal branding and building your identity online. But what you just described is actually very parallel to offsite construction. And you can probably relate to this because a lot goes into the planning process. All of the drawings, all of the selections, you know, you visually create the end result on paper and in your mind, you know, and on paper and, you know, through BIM, whatever device you're using. And then when construction starts, the construction happens really quickly.
Yeah.
Because you had this plan, you thought it out in advance, you created the roadmap of how you wanted that home or that building to look in the end. And what you described is exactly that, you know, and maybe it's a little serendipitous right now. Maybe you didn't have all of those pieces in place when you first started. But looking back, when you think about how the podcast led to the TED Talk, led to the book, led to the mastermind, and then the 2.0 on all of that,
yeah,
there's a lot of planning that goes into that.
For sure. Yeah. And definitely wasn't, like you said, you sit down and say, I'm going to do all these things. Now it's planned. It's definitely built on itself.
Right.
But yeah, you're right. It's a great parallel. I've kind of been in the pre-construction phase for a while, and now I'm getting ready to break ground.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Exactly. So what do you tell people who say, I just don't have the time to do it? You know, you've already said, show up, just show up. You know, but how do you make those priorities work for you? You often talk about habit stacking. And, you know, a lot of us are either new to that way of thinking or maybe are in that way of thinking, but need to be encouraged to take it to the next level.
Yeah. So first, what do I say to people that say they don't have time? You know, you beat me out. That's what I say. I say, you know, yes, you have time with a colorful phrase, because I just don't believe it when you don't have time. We have time for so much. And if you break down and get an awareness of your time, and you break down where you're actually spending your time, and then align what you're spending your time on with what you want to accomplish, I think you'll find that there's a lot of things that don't line up. And so there's things you can cut from your schedule that aren't serving this bigger goal you have for yourself. And so you got to get rid of that stuff first. And then you see how much time you actually have. And then you have to start experimenting with what do you do when and what works best for you. And you start with one thing and you master that one thing, and then you add another thing. And that's where the habit stacking comes in. So many people try to go 0 to 60, right? But you start with getting 1% better at something, and then you stack those 1% until you get to 100%.
Absolutely.
So that and scheduling time. You know, I've heard Grant Cardone say it best. He calls any free time on his schedule is like the devil, he says. It's got to be filled up, because if you don't fill it with something, somebody else will. So planning it out and scheduling it and literally making the time for what's important to you, whether it's your business, your side hustle, your family. I mean, I literally have stuff on my schedule of don't do anything but hang out with the wife and kids, right? I make sure that there's time for that, and I don't let it get filled up with everything else.
Right.
So that I can still be a good husband, a good father, a good employee for the day job, and, you know, a business person in my own right with everything that I'm doing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So popping in today, we have George Ryman saying good morning from Phoenix, Arizona. And I'm sure he's super excited for you, Miles, and your new news. George, if you didn't catch the beginning of our podcast or the beginning of Increasing Influence, we're talking about an award-winning podcast with Relish the Journey. Super exciting. And Dave Cooper would like to know, how do you get picked for a TED Talk? It doesn't just happen.
Right. You apply, right? It's like anything. You can't wait for people to come knocking at your door. Now, if you're somebody like Brene Brown, right, like you could be invited to give a TED Talk. But for me, I searched for TED events near me, found one, and applied. Mm-hmm. So again, I hate to keep dumbing everything down and making it seem like, but it's so much of it's very simple, and you just have to figure out what you want to take action towards it. So I wanted to do it. I actually was looking at ways to start a TEDx event because I didn't know that there was one near me. Mm-hmm. But then when I found one, I found that they were accepting applications for speakers and applied. And then I was picked for the first round of auditions. And for TEDx, it's the local versions of the big TED event. So they're all run by independent organizers. So what I'm about to describe was my process. It could be different for a TEDx event near you.
Mm-hmm.
But the way they did it was there was an online written application. Then they whittled it down. Had to go give a 5-minute version of my talk in person in front of a panel of judges.
Mm-hmm.
Then they weighed in. And then from that audition, they selected 12 people out of a couple hundred that applied to give a speech. And so then they said, okay, great. Now you have 15 minutes. And I had to go back to the drawing board again and write a new version. And now it's just been so long because the event was supposed to be in April. So I've had this for like a year or more in my head. And I'm excited that next week I get to check it off the mental to-do list. It'll be a big weight off my shoulders.
Well, outstanding. And I guess what I would say is, you mean they didn't just call you and invite you to, come speak? You actually had to look for it, apply yourself, find it and do all of that.
Again, hard work, right? It's you have to make it happen for yourself because the universe doesn't just drop stuff on your doorstep.
Right. But to be fair, when things do get dropped on your doorstep, you're ready. You're ready because of all the time you put in. Yeah.
And it's like this article, right? Like it gets dropped and it's a result of all the other stuff I sought out and did work for, right? It's rare you're just sitting on your couch, you haven't done anything, and all of a sudden the phone rings and it's Ted and they want to hear from you, right? You've got to be out there doing something else.
Right. That's cool. And speaking of something else, now we have Dave saying, hey,
I'm supposed to be on a plane. What is he doing? You need a break. He wanted you to talk. Huh? Hello, Dave.
Yeah. He's all over the place this week. And I think, like you said, he's headed to another event tonight. So always on the run with
he epitomizes hard work pays off for sure.
Well, it's funny with that, when you're passionate about something, when you believe in something, I'm not even sure you can really call it work.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, I have fun doing the podcast and this stuff, right? And writing the book was fun, and the TED Talk's going to be fun.
Mm-hmm.
And Dave jet setting all over the country, interviewing folks about offsite construction. That's fun. So
right. I did tell him he will be quarantining when he gets home.
One of the best ways I heard it described was my roommate in college, Mike Tonard. So he was on the show because he's a DJ on the side. And somebody asked him that, like, this is fun for you? Because Mike told him that he did it for fun or something. And Mike described it as his golf. He's like, some people play golf. That's their hobby.
Yeah.
But for me, I DJ. And so it's very similar. Like you can go pay to participate in activity, or you can be paid to perform an activity. And it's just a different way to think about work versus, something that feeds your soul.
Yeah. And I mean, George Ryman says, don't sit back and wait for good things to happen. Go out and make them happen.
Absolutely.
And that's true, whether it's golf or tennis or cooking, whatever your passion is, whatever you want to be good at, you want to exceed in, get out there, make it happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And what does Dave say? Dave says,
getting yelled at for Reno's phone.
They are yelling at me to turn off my phone. Taxiing down runway. All right, Dave, safe travels and keep that mask on, will you?
I think what we should do, if you pull that comment back up, right? We should create a profile picture for Dave's LinkedIn that's him wearing a mask whenever he's traveling.
Oh my God.
When he's not in the office, he's got the mask on,
Right. Instead of the out of office.
He's out in the world. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, I mean, you know what? Talk about goal setting. When almost a year ago, it started, one of his goals was to connect with Matt Rissinger from the Build Show. That was one of his things. So much like how you're sitting next to Joe Rogan on a list of, top podcasts, David said, Matt's been doing this for a really long time. It would be great to one day catch up with him and share the screen with him. And sure enough, he also achieved that goal this week, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's another great example of he had to do a lot of other things to get to that moment. It wasn't just like Matt called up and said, hey, buddy, I heard you have a camera. Let's get on screen. Right.
Yeah. No, excellent. And then George Ryman also says, one of my father's famous quotes, God helps those who help themselves.
Yeah. So true.
Yeah. No, it definitely is, and so again, going back, and even with everything that's going on around us right now, we're heading into a crazy time with elections. We're in the swing of things. When you stay focused and when you lead by example, a lot of that external noise kind of goes away. There's only so much you can control. So when you think about, all the noise in your head and everything that you have to worry about, all those different things, when you're in the moment doing your podcast, or when Dave's in the moment, speaking with people, that's it. You all shut off the rest of the world at that time and give your full attention to your guest.
Well, I would even encourage people to just shut out the outside world, whatever, all the time, right? Like I don't have cable TV. I don't, I do my own research to get my political opinions. I'm not watching the, crazy debates that are happening. Right, I know so many people that that takes up so much mental space.
Yeah.
You get stressed out about it. I actually recorded a podcast. It's not live yet, but I called it Twitter Makes You Bitter. Because you're reading the news on Twitter and you just feel like the world is in shambles. Like, what am I doing? What's the point? Right. Versus you can't control that. Like you said, focus on what you can control and what you can create, instead of letting what you're consuming, cancel out like your dreams of creating, because it's easy to let that happen. And so, you can be informed, sure. And a lot of people, take an active role, and that's what they want to create, is they want to create a difference. They want to, get involved in politics. That's their thing. That's awesome.
Right.
But for me, it's not right now. Yeah. So I don't let that get in the way.
Yeah. And that's another example of how you make your priorities work for you. So if you want to be, fed information from the outside world, and if you want to accept that as your own truth, that's fine, but if it's a priority for you to come up with your personal outlook and your point of view, and again, going back to your personal brand, what's in that bucket of your personal brand, you have to make your priorities work for you. You can't just wait for somebody else to do it for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what else, Miles? I mean, it's so fun to kind of take a little bit of a detour this week and just relish this moment, relish this journey, and really celebrate a couple of super big wins this week. I mean, being named a top podcast, having your TED Talk this weekend. I mean, is next week just, living life free and clear for you?
Yeah, really. It's again, like the whole, I guess I'm good at compartmentalizing is what I'm learning in this conversation. Is I haven't thought about the fact that it's next week all that much. I'm still just in that, going back to that habit stack where I've got my routine of, okay, I've got my calendar today. And so I focus on what's today because it's in my calendar. I pull it up. What am I doing? I've got this at 1. I've got these client meetings. Over lunch, I'm going to practice my TED Talk. I just live that day until I get to the next day, and it's scheduled out in advance, and I do that one. So when I get to Saturday next week and it's, hey, drive up to Williamsport, that'll be, I'm sure the hour car ride I have to the TED Talk event will be very anxious. And it'll hit me then. But thankfully I found out the order, and I'm one of the first speakers, which I'm super pumped about, because then it's just over with and I can enjoy the event, and I'm not sitting there watching other people speak and freaking out about that I have to go. So it'll be good.
Yeah. Now you're going to put others in that position.
Yeah. I would say I didn't set the lineup, so it's not my fault. I'm thankful that I'm up front. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, awesome. I mean, Miles, I'm so excited for you. So proud. So eager to start celebrating with you online and everywhere else. And just, showcasing this as another great example of hard work really paying off.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. So any parting words for us today, Miles? Do you want to take us out with the audience?
Sure. Parting words, right? Thank you for consuming this, but shut it off now and go create something, right? Everybody out there has that inkling of something they've said, one day I'll start this, or they've got 5 started and unfinished books in their Google Docs, right? I've heard all the different versions. Just hopefully you take this as something that'll prompt you to shut out the outside stuff that's keeping you from getting it done and focus in on what you're doing and do it. And then one day we can have you on Increasing Influence and we'll celebrate their win and they're getting it done instead of me. So that's part.
They'll be celebrating with you.
Sure. There you go.
All right. Well, awesome. Congratulations again. And thanks everybody for joining us today. What do we have tomorrow? We have BS Friday coming up tomorrow, again with Dave Cooper and Mark Willie. We have Nikki Kruger on talking about, oh gosh, all good things about building science. I think we're talking about water tightness tomorrow. So
cool.
Please join us tomorrow and we'll see you all next time.
All right. See you, everybody.
Bye now.